I'm Upeka Fernando, the host for the evening. We are back with another session of Creative Circuit 2.0. And for this session, we have another very experienced professional in the industry. We have with us a lead product designer, aesthetic therapist, digital designer, podcaster, and a brand builder. He's none other than John Sorrentino.
Good morning, everybody.
Yes, so to begin the conversation, I thought of having a question not related to UI UX, but just to get an idea of what you think about design thinking, what design thinking means to you.
Yeah, so design thinking, it's a big, very big buzzword. Design thinking is always brought up with not only designers, but stakeholders of projects, business owners, people that are very familiar with trying to grow their business, and they look to design to help do that. And so for me, design thinking is a conversation of how design can impact businesses, companies, brands, a lot of different things that I think design can take to the next level. And so to me, design thinking is something along those lines of figuring out what the problem is, figuring out the potential solutions that are available, the ways of doing that, and how you can kind of stop your consumers or customers and make them think twice about their choice of whether it is to purchase, whether it is to visit, whether it is to follow, whatever it may be.
Yeah. So then we'll straight away jump into our discussion today, which is UI UX Design 101. So my first question for you would be, what is the main difference between UI and UX?
So UI and worked on a lot of different product teams or digital teams or app teams, whatever you want to call it. Everyone has a different language or term for it. And for me, it's always been the same because I've always done both. So to me, I've always been a product designer versus some companies have only designers that are UI or UI focused. Some companies have UX designers that are focused on solely that. And so whenever I've had to do a user interface or think through or walk through a user experience, I've had to do both of those in the same. So for me, there never really has been a difference. To me, it's all product design. It's all digital design. For some, I've had conversations with companies where they have a user experience designer and they need a user interface designer and vice versa. And, they are looking for someone to take designs from one or the other, or take notes or insights or whatever it may be, and turn those into some sort of design or some sort of asset, or to deliver something that is going to be turned into design. So to answer your question, I think it is a step either before or after of basically understand what it is a consumer. And when I say consumer, some may think of it as a customer or someone who you've understood what their steps are, what their process is going to be, where they're coming from, and then you're taking those kind of insights or those ideas and turning them into, say, tangible design, an interface, an app, or whatever it may be, a website. So I think user interface obviously is a process of designing, whatever it may be, a dashboard, a website. User experience may be understanding and outlining where a user is coming from, versus, for me, it's all product design. So I've been able and been lucky to do both.
Yeah. So if we consider something like this, UI UX design is mostly a separate niche in the overall design language, right? So in what ways does it differ, from the overall designing process? In what ways does it differ? UI UX design differs from the overall design language?
Um, as a designer, I would say that like UI, UX design could determine a whole project. It can determine everything. When you're building an app, a website, when you're building something as simple as an email form, um, I think design, product design or UI, UX design can determine the whole project. When does one defer to the other or refer to the other? I think to me, and what makes sense to me, and again, and having conversations with companies that are hired, companies that are looking for these specific designers. One is looking for a UI designer, one is looking for a UX designer. I would say, and what makes sense to me is that user experience is usually the outlining, and that's what comes first, and then it then has a conversation with UI designers. But to be quite honest, I've never been lucky enough to just have separate, coworkers or colleagues or whatever to do each of those processes. It's always been upon myself to do both. So some may say that it is just one job to do at all times.
Yeah. So in many cases, we have seen, like, let's say, for example, a website that may not be very pleasing to the user. We have seen cases like that. So in what ways does you feel like what steps you take to, make it appealing to users? Like, do you do your own research on that, or do you have your own separate, a signature that you have? What makes your design special that stands out from the rest?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I advocate for a lot because I think, to me, my design to working with a client on a project, whether it is a website or an app, it is, as much as it is making something look pretty, it's also making the owner understand their consumer in a way that, design people are just focused on that, since day one. And so I think that is a really important part of design overall, right? Like I don't think it's just, coming in and making things look so sleek and minimal or, typographically amazing. I think it's also about educating the person that you're working with in a way that they understand how design is going to impact their website or their app.
Yes. So in that case, like, how do you put yourself in the mind of the user? Like, how do you see, like, in the user side, like, what makes it appealing to users? Like, how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been lucky enough to feel that, quite honestly, I've tapped out in my design skills probably a few years ago. I feel like I've gotten really good at a few different things. I feel really comfortable with those things. And in a way that's allowed me to put all of my, put my design biases, in terms of trends or typefaces and things like that aside at times to understand how a user is really going to interact. A consumer, a user, a customer, whatever you want to call it, someone who's going to use the end product. And I think that's really important. I think putting your own feet in their shoes is something that, for some reason, I don't know why, maybe it's the way I grew up or something like that, but I just think about everything that I use is, okay, if I do this way, how is another person going to do it this way? Or how is that person thinking about it? Are they thinking differently? Are they opening it and opening whatever the thing is, an app or a website, and being confused? I think I do that a lot. And it's not just in my projects. I think it's in every day, when it comes to billboards on the road, or when it comes to an interface on, I don't know, a microwave. As silly as that sounds, these are all things that, when I use, I'm actually thinking about, okay, how does someone else use this? And are they getting confused, or are they having the same problems as I am? And I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older. I'm now pushing 30 years old. But I find myself asking that question more and more and more, because maybe it's just I'm getting stumped on certain things. But, I think nowadays there are so many digital interfaces, there are so many websites, so many apps, and some of them just completely miss the mark on design, and it leads to terrible experiences. It leads to customers never coming back. And I think I've been in that seat plenty of times, and so I constantly think of, okay, how can we improve this? How can we make this better?
Yes. So from getting from what you said, like, how did you get back from a creator's block? Like, if you have had any, I'm not sure if you have had any, but if you face that creator's block, like, how do you get back from that?
Yeah, it seems to be a question that every creative has, which is kind of interesting. And I thought I would never hit that. My younger years, I thought I would never have creative block or anything like that. And I've had it in probably more so, obviously, with the pandemic. I've had it in the last couple of years. And to be quite honest, it's not a pretty answer, but I kind of just stopped doing everything. I don't look at much. I get off of social media. I don't look at the internet. I mean, I do when I have to, obviously, but it's not something that it's not like I'm contributing to it. I feel like I'm always contributing. And so, sometimes I don't know if there's anyone out there that feels like this, but a lot of my career, a lot of my years as a designer has been always working on something, always working on a project. And so burnout for me is very real. I think you can easily drive yourself to the ground, after a couple of years of just working nonstop. And so for me, I've really had to learn how to step back and really take the time to give myself a break. Otherwise, I'm very hard on myself. I keep working myself to the bone. And, I think, again, it wasn't until the last couple of years, especially with the pandemic, that I actually learned that I was doing that to myself. So I needed to just get away. I mean, I've been working remote, I've been traveling, and I think that's been a really good thing for me, learning. Maybe the one thing about that is that I've been learning the entire time. I've been teaching myself a new language. I've been experiencing in new places and, visiting, traveling. So I think that's all for me a great way to deal with the creative block, the evil creative block.
Yeah. So another case that would come, like, to any designer or anyone who's working with clients, is fulfilling the client's problems to the maximum, like fulfilling their requirements to a maximum. Like, what if you fail to do that? Like, at some point, what if you fail to meet the customer's requirement? How do you get back from that?
When did I fear fulfilling the client's all of their problems?
I mean, like, if you feel like you haven't fulfilled your customer's requirement, then how do you get back from
that? So the one thing I believe in a lot, and this might be a business secret, this might be a design secret, but it's always under promise and over deliver. Under promise, over deliver. Then your clients will always be very impressed and happy when you go that extra step. And it might sound terrible because you say, oh, what are you going to underpromise if they want to come in and build a website or a digital app or something else, but you kind of need to give yourself a little bit of credit, a little bit of space for you to really understand the problem that is, that the client is coming to you with. And you need to figure out all the ways that you can make this amazing. I think sometimes, for me, I think I've been really good at telling clients no and understanding at the core what it is they're asking for. Because I've had clients come to me and ask, hey, we want to build this app, but it also has a Facebook element to it, and we want to build a social network. And I immediately say, sorry, that this project is not going to be something that I can do, and it's not. And so in that point, I've been able to understand what projects are viable for myself as a designer and when I should tell clients that, hey, this isn't going to work. And so I think that's part of it, where you can understand your capabilities and how you can make the client the most happy. And then I've had clients say, hey, I need a website. Great. we're starting from a very low bar, ground zero. You need a website. We're going to make this website the most amazing thing for you. Whether it is like visually appealing or whether it is really easy to use, we're going to do that. And so from that point, I know that I can add so much more to what the client expects the website to operate as and really deliver something that they're amazing, that they're going to be amazed by, versus trying to reach a bar that may seem impossible.
That's very inspiring to all young designers who are watching us, joining us today, because if you under-promise and over-deliver, that's, I think, the way to go as a designer. So my next question for you would be, like, I myself have seen many of your webinars in the Adobe Creative Cloud YouTube account. So what is your go-to application for UI UX design especially?
Yeah, I mean, I've used a ton and I wish Adobe would sponsor me. So if anyone from Adobe anywhere in the world is listening, I would say, you know, getting into UI UX design is as easy as downloading Adobe XD because it's free. It's a very easy program to use. If anyone's familiar with Photoshop or Illustrator, you know, it is like a second instinct. I don't know a good phrase for that, but it's like learning, you know, the same exact shortcuts, the same exact conventions for selections and masking, and all of that stuff. And, you know, I today actually don't use XD at my role at my company. I use Figma. And so there's a ton of different, I know there's at least 3 different programs or applications that people in product design use today in digital design. It's Figma, Sketch, and XD. And I've used all of them. And now using Figma, I would say that I kind of miss Adobe XD. I think there are good things and bad things of all the apps, all the softwares. But I will say I miss Adobe XD.
That's good. And so in any industry, like let's consider the business industry and even in the design industry, there's many new trends coming up. Like, what do you see as the biggest trend that is coming up in the UX UI design?
I think something that has clicked with me that I think is really visually interesting is probably incorporating more 3D elements into designs from step one or from ground zero. I think, yeah, you know, as we get more interested or more towards a world that is digital and you're able to put on goggles and be in a completely different space or environment, I think being able to bring in 3D elements into, you know, screens is something that's very interesting to me. I think that is probably one of the biggest trends in digital design. You know, everything used to be flat. Everything used to be filled with animations. And as you scroll, you know, something happens. And those are all still there, but I think now it's incorporating it in a way that, you know, something like a 3D element can be compiled with all these different pieces, and on interaction, they explode or they come together or something like that. And I think that when I see experiences, you know, whether it be websites or apps or, you know, anything on screen that incorporates that, I think, wow, you know, they've really done a great job. And I think that's something that will become more and more normal in the coming months or years.
So getting back to UX UI design, so what ways do you suggest for new designers to learn? Like, is it through formal methods or is it self-learning? Like, how do you suggest for new designers to learn UI UX design?
I mean, I will say this, you know, I grew up and went through a design program that was very focused on branding and marketing. And I think there was only one project that involved even touching a website. And then not only that, but then there was only one class that was not even in the design program that was teaching students how to, say, code in HTML and CSS. So for me, it was very much trying to seek out opportunities to learn those different methods. I had been building websites since I was probably about 12 years old. I learned that from my father, who used to own a company that was that would host game servers, and so that's kind of how I got into design all together. And he would host game servers, he would host websites, and so I looked at those those clients or websites that he would host, because back then that was a big deal. And I would say, okay, cool, I want to build those. And so I taught myself how to code, at a very young age. So back to my original point, I went through a program that was marketing and branding focused, and I had no formal teachings on what digital design was or what UI UX was. And I knew that I wanted to get into that. And kind of haphazardly, I had to find and seek out those opportunities to learn, whether that was YouTube videos, whether that was trying to help out the digital design department at companies that I worked at. I worked at a company that was a digital ad tech company. Basically, my job was to take the brand assets of a company, apply it to all these different ad sizes, 300 by 250, 160 by 600. I still remember these. They haunt me in my sleep. And I would then apply those assets and deliver them back to the company. And there was one UI UX designer that was building the product that we would use to launch these ads for companies. And one day I just walked over and said, hey, I'm really interested in getting into product design. Is there anything that I can do to help you? And over the next couple of weeks, I put together a deck of things that, hey, it could be improved on the product side or on the app side. And that got me into working on a few things for him, because he was like the only designer. So he was super busy. He had a headache every day walking into work. And that process actually got me my next role. That got me my next job at my next company. And from there, it was the same thing. Hey, I think this can be improved. I think I can, maybe help out. Is there anything that I can do? And I've always done that. I still do that today. And I think that's probably the best way to, one, learn a new aspect of design or a new, facet of design. And it's also a great way to teach yourself new skills, put yourself in a very uncomfortable situation and see what you can do.
So let's get back to a bit more of a technical aspect of UI UX design. So nowadays we have to make websites more accessible to people with visual and hearing disabilities as well. So how do you address that? Like what are the things that you yourself do?
I'm sorry, what are the things that I use that they're for websites that are just completely unusable?
No, I mean for people who are with vision and hearing disabilities, like.
Yeah, so this is something that in the last 2 years has been a big focus when I'm working on a team. And to be quite honest, it's been something that I've had to really teach myself. I've had to double check what colors are, have enough contrast, what methods of, developing, forms or screens is best for people who have, visibility issues or hearing disabilities, things like that. And to be quite honest, it kind of came from a developer that I was working with. I'm not sure she's going to see this, but Chung, thank you. And, she was really focused on this. And I don't think this was something that was really a priority for me. And so she taught me a lot of that in the last year. And again, this was 2 years ago. This was something that I learned in my role, in my job. And so it was something that I had to kind of really, apply myself to, really focus and learn more. And again, seek out more opportunities to understand how it is to build, any sort of website or app or, again, a form. Something as simple as a email form can be a very big accessibility problem. And so those things have been things that I focus on, and have taken that experience of learning and having a developer say to me, hey, this isn't really a good way to do it when people have those kinds of impairments. And so I've taken that to my next role. And now when I have a team of say 10 developers that I work with, they aren't asking me those questions or, hey, is this color, this color code accessible, or is this enough contrast on a white background, or vice versa? And so I now actually ask myself those questions in my own head and make sure that I'm doing that in my designs.
It's really good to hear. And let's get back a little away from the topic. How do you promote yourself? Like, how do you promote the brand John Sorrentino, the product designer, to get the clients that you have today?
Yeah, I would say this: in the last couple of months, I've probably taken a step back from doing those things. But funny enough, I found myself in a situation a few months ago where, I was doing what I call exercises, design exercises, basically taking a photo in my camera roll on my phone, taking that, editing it, applying typography to it, and then posting it on Instagram or posting it somewhere, on the web. And just in that process, I've had a few friends say, "Oh, wow, this is really cool." And, a couple months later, or a couple of years later, these are friends that I've known since high school. I think that was when Instagram kind of came around in the world, probably middle school, actually. They are looking to start businesses, and they kind of had said to me, they come to me and they say, "Hey, we're looking for some help. Do you think you could help us? You seem to be doing this design thing, right?" And I would say, yeah, of course, obviously I would love to help friends and build anything that I can for them. I think, another platform that has really been good for me has been TikTok. I think TikTok has been a great medium to talk about design, to kind of share and answer questions that, designers that may even be, watching this have all the time. I think it seems like there are a lot of the similar questions of like creative block, how do you fulfill clients' needs and things like that. So that's been a great platform to talk about those things. I also host a podcast called Well Fed, and that has also been a great way to kind of get some sort of connections with people outside of my immediate circle, and I think that's also been really helpful as well. We have a Slack channel that has like probably over 250 people now, and that's been growing in the last year, and that's been really great. And these are all people I have no clue. I think there's maybe one friend that I was chatting with before this conversation that I've known since I was 16, but other than that, there's 249 people that I have no clue, did not know before they joined, and now we're kind of all chatting about the same problems as being a designer.
Okay. Since we are running a bit short of time, I will go back to the final question now. So, what advice would you give to a young design enthusiast who's willing to join the industry?
I would say, look to people, find the things that you really like. For example, I think yesterday I was walking in the store and I was looking at a package of a product, and I said, "Wow, that kind of looks like Apple," because I love Apple. I love their design. I think each keynote seems to be a new, fresh take on their brand, and I look at that as a reference constantly. I look at their visual language. I look at how they use parts of their overall design system and how they incorporate all these amazing things into all of their different mediums of messaging and things like that. And so if I was, to give advice to a young designer, I would say, find those things that you really enjoy, find the things that catch your eye, that you find appealing, and try to imitate them. Try to imitate them for a while, in the sense that you're going to learn why they do those things or why they put something in a certain place. I would caveat that and say, don't use it for commercial use, but do it for your own projects. Do it for your school projects. Do it for showing your parents, showing your family. I can't remember. I can't tell you the time. And there have been so many times that I walked over to my roommate when I was living in my apartment and said, "Hey, what do you think of this?" Because he was in he was in HR. He's my best friend, And I would basically just want to show him things because I knew that he wasn't thinking the way I was, and he was thinking the way that people that I'm trying to appeal to would think. And so I would just show him anything, whether it be a billboard, whether it be an app, a logo, whatever it may be. And so that to me has been a great way. And what I would say to do for younger designers is find people that you admire in terms of design and the way things that they're creating, whether it be a company, show everyone, and try to iterate and try to continue to make something better or different, or take feedback in and then give something back out after that. It's a complete cycle, and that's, I think, something that I've done for the last 10 years of my career.
Since we are running short of time, I think it's time for us to conclude. So thank you, Mr. John Sorrentino, for joining with us today. I'm sure it was very inspiring to all our viewers on Facebook Live. And it was very special to me as well, because I myself is a UI UX design enthusiast. So once again, thank you, Mr. John, for taking time off your busy schedule for joining with us today at the Creative Circuit 2.0.
Yes, thank you for this conversation. I mean, it's been great, and I'm glad to have been able to join this morning, even if it was a little late. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
දැනට රටේ පවතින පොහොර ගැටලුවට පිළියමක් ලෙස අම්පාර සරල ඉංජිනේරින් අප ආයතනය විසින් නිෂ්පාදනය කරන ලද කොම්පෝස්ට් ෂෙඩර් යන්ත්‍රය තමයි මගේ මේ පතේ තියෙන්නේ. ඉතින් දැනට රට තුළට රසායනික පොහොර ගෙන්වීම සිදු කරන්නේ. ඉතින් ඒකට පිළියමක් ලෙස තමයි කාබනික ද්‍රව්‍ය කැපල කිරීමේ යන්ත්‍රය නිෂ්පාදනය කරේ. මේක අපි නම් කරලා තියෙන්නේ SHR 0.45 කොම්පෝස්ට් ෂෙඩර් යන්ත්‍රය කියලා. මේ යන්ත්‍රය මගින් පොල් අතු, පොල් ලෙලි, ඒ වගේම කෙසෙල් කඳ, ඇල්බීසියා, ජපන් ජබර, වැනි ශාක කැබලි කරගැනීමේ හැකියාව තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම කොම්පෝස්ට් නිෂ්පාදනය සඳහා යොදා ගන්න ශාක කොටස් වල ගල් 3ක් වන නිෂ්කාම්බය සහිත ශාක කොටස් මේ යන්ත්‍රය මගින් කැබලි කිරීමේ හැකියාව පවතී. මේ යන්ත්‍රය මගින් පැයකට කිලෝ 2500ක් 3004 ප්‍රමාණයක් කාබනික ද්‍රව්‍ය කැබලි කිරීමේ හැකියාව පවතී. මේ යන්ත්‍රය ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන අවස්ථාවේ පැයකට ඉන්ධන ලීටර් 2ක පමණ ප්‍රමාණයක් දහනය වීම සිදු වෙනවා.
එන්ජින් රීබෝරිං හා කෘෂි උපකරණ නිෂ්පාදනයේ ප්‍රමුඛයෝ කලන ඉංජිනේරිං අම්පාර, බවුසර්, ට්‍රේලර්, ලොග්ගල් මැෂින්, කොන්ක්‍රීට් මික්ස්චර්, තහඩු කැපීම, තහඩු නැවීම හා සියලු යකඩ වැඩ, කොම්පෝස්ට් සැකසීමට ගන්න අමුද්‍රව්‍ය කැබලි කිරීමේ යන්ත්‍ර ඇතුළු කෘෂි උපකරණ පහසු මිලට. ආසිරි මෝටර්ස් අනුබද්ධ කලන ඉංජිනේරිං අම්පාර 063 22 24 124.
Narakin a life at the lally in a look at the body behind the superior than my men. Bibi, up is some quick, bibi, up is some quick, bibi. අලුතින් හඳුන්වාදන මිලිලිටර 125 කූල් එකේ රස විඳින්න සංක්වික් බේබි ලොකුවට පොඩියට සුපිරියට.
ඉස්සර හැමදාම එක්ස්කියුසස්. ජොගින් යන්නේ නැද්ද?
වහී වගේ.
අයියර සැලඩක විසිකලේ?
මල් වලට පෝර වෙන්නනේ දැම්මේ.
එක්ස්කියුසස් නැති හෙල්ති ලයිෆ් එකේ ෆස්ට් ස්ටෙප් එක ෆ්ලෝරා. ෆ්ලෝරා කැමරාස වැඩි කරනවා වගේම ආදරණීයන්ගේ හදවත් රැක ගන්නවා.